the rector of Holy Cross Faith Memorial Episcopal Church in Pawleys Island. And I'm sitting here today on the chancel steps in the nave of the church with Miss Johanna Brown and Mr. Nathan Brown, who are lifelong residents of Pawleys Island and the Waccamaw Neck, and also members of Holy Cross Episcopal Church. What I'd like to start with is asking Nathan and Johanna to think back and when they were children, and to tell us, first of all, what it was like growing up on the Waccamaw Neck as children, and go back to some of your earliest memories if you can. When I say that, what's the first thing comes to mind, Nathan?
Well, the first thing come to mind is we didn't have any kind of road like we have now. It was all dirt, and the transportation was horse and buggy or mule, and our survival was mostly from out of a small field. Some people would call it a farm, but it wasn't large enough to be a farm. It was just a small field and a good garden with chicken, hogs, goat, and stuff surrounding us.
What about you, Johanna? What are some of your earliest memories here on Waccamaw Neck?
Some of my earliest memories, remember when I was a little girl, didn't travel along with Nathan and Papa, but I stayed home with my mother, and she taught me things that she knew that would help me in my life further on. Some of the things that she taught me was to have patience, love people, and be sure to understand before you speak. And that was the basic of my mother. And then she taught me about taking care of the house, taking care of the yard. She always said that your yard represents your house. If anyone comes to your house and your yard unclean, they don't care about coming in because they know the house is likewise. And then with my mother, she liked to crochet a lot and she liked to sew. And she taught me how to crochet, and she taught me how to sew little blouses for myself. It wasn't perfect then, but it was a start in learning how to do it. And the most important thing to me, my mother would always take me to church with her and my daddy. She said the foundation begins at home, and when the foundation begins there, then you go on to church and you do whatever is possible that you can do for the church. She taught me how to work on the altar, to change the hangings on the altar. And I remember vividly one Saturday, she was going and she, "All right, Johanna, let's go." "Mama, why don't you call Nathan sometime?" So she said, "Men don't work on the altars. Ladies work on the altar." So I got that from her there.
Now that was always the Episcopal Church.
Always.
Correct?
I've always been an Episcopalian.
The first church here on the Waccamaw Neck was established around when, Nathan?
To give a near year, I'm not good at years, but the first church was right behind where we're seated now. It was just a clapboard church, no ceiling, top nor side, and batten windows. You could open them, but there was no glass in them. It would give you light, and you could see out. That's my remembrance of the first church, and it was also a schoolhouse. It was school first at church on Sunday.
Do you recall the first minister that was here, the first Episcopal priest that was sent here?
Actually, it wasn't a minister. It was a lay reader, but we were so proud to have him, and everybody learned to call him Reverend Martin. But he was a lay reader sent here to give instruction in school and etc. And later, right shortly after he was here, his wife came, and they were servicing us very well.
The population of the Waccamaw Neck, and we're talking probably in the 30s, 40s, pre-World War II, was, I mean, how many people do you think lived on the Waccamaw Neck then?
Well, we actually started to learn about the world and etc. Before the 30s. It was in the early 20s, and the population was roughly about 200 blacks and about 100 white.
Well, now the Waccamaw Neck itself has just till recently been isolated from lots of places. I mean, we're almost an island here, and I guess all the travel was primarily north instead of south because of the Winyah Bay and separating the Waccamaw Neck from Georgetown. And so, was you traveling north? Did you go toward Conway or Myrtle Beach, or primarily toward Georgetown when you?
We would go toward Conway on the River Road. Myrtle Beach wasn't anything to go to then. Myrtle Beach was not Myrtle Beach. Myrtle Beach was just starting to form.
Mm-hmm.
Going toward Conway as a kid, and it's still there. There were some hills in the road. We thought that then that they were mountains. It was amusing for us to travel through Saugusty. You'll find some hilly section, not very high. We didn't know what. We really thought more of it than it was.
Now, Johanna, you were talking. We had a conversation once about you're traveling to Georgetown, mm-hmm. and how that had to take place. I mean, there were no bridges going to Georgetown until just recently, I guess, in the last 30 or 40 years.
Well, when I was a little girl, the way that we got to Georgetown was by motorboats, little motorboats in the river, and my Uncle Allen had one. And every time Papa would like to go to buy groceries to bring back over here to the store, if he didn't carry Nathan, he would carry me. I don't think he ever carried Philip. Mm-hmm. But that was very fascinating to me at that time because the river was clear and wide, and the water was calm and everything. And then as the boat was going through, we would just take our hand like that and just play in it. And that was a lot of fun for us. Every time he wanted to go to town, I'd be the first one to ask, "No, it's not your time now. It's the next child."
How old were you when you took that first
I
trip to
think I
Georgetown?
took the first one about 12.
About 12.
About 12 years old.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
How about you, Nathan, when you recall going to Georgetown and getting on the boat?
Well, I recall going to Georgetown earlier than 12. Probably I was 7 or 8. I almost lost my life going to Georgetown at that age because I would ask my parents, my daddy mostly, to let me go with my grandfather. And my grandfather was a man of the world. He just liked to associate with people and etc. And the boat name was the Elizabeth Ann. The Elizabeth Ann had a sort of side deck that you could, all the way along, that you could walk along on. And they let me go to Georgetown with my granddaddy, and my granddaddy was entertaining the people by singing. He could sing too. He's singing. And the boat, in retrospect, what I know now, the boat land behind C.L. Ford and Son. But that wasn't a real landing place for the boat. It landed there to put a lady off, or some lady of good much importance, and they made a special landing just to put her off. And the minute the boat landed, I got out on that side runner. And it wasn't 5 minutes before the captain pulled off. And when he pulled off, my inertia was going the other way, because he was pulling into the mainstream of the river, and I don't know where the hand come from, but a hand came through a window and just hold me just like that, and I didn't fall over in the river. So that was my first real time of going to Georgetown.
That's a most interesting recollection, David.
Mm-hmm.
As time began to pass and you guys were growing up here on the Waccamaw Neck, the Reverend William Forsyth showed up, who was an Episcopal priest, and began to do his work here. And Nathan, you and I have had conversations about this before, and I'd like to hear both of you talk about the approximate year that Reverend Forsyth came, and what impact he had on this community when he showed up. Want to go? You go first, Miss Johanna.
Oh, I remember when Reverend Forsyth came here. I was a little girl, and I have attended school under Mr. Martin. And it was about 2 months that we were in school, and he took sick, and he died. That year, we didn't have any more school. Mm-hmm. And after that, then one Reverend Byrne came, and he taught us a little while, and he was a member of this church, a rector of this church, and then he left. It was about 2 or 3 years Reverend Forsyth came.
Now, Johanna, do you recall approximately the years we're talking about?
I'm talking about like in the 24th and 5th years.
Okay.
I knew more about when Reverend Forsyth came, the year he came, and that was about 24.
In 1924?
Yeah. Okay. And when Reverend Forsyth came, then things started looking real good for us, because he was a man that really believed in education, and he started us off on the right foot. You had to get the foundation. You couldn't skip over the foundation, because if you skip over the foundation, you're going to fall behind. And we thought he was really hard. But after having grown up and got out into the world, we found out that he was the right person for us, because we really learned about the Bible, we learned about the community, and we had our schoolwork to do. Sometime I thought I would be a preacher, from the way he make us recite the Psalms and everything. And if he says Psalms 24 for Friday, that was Psalms 24 for Friday. We had to learn it, and I try hard to learn it. If not, I had a little way that I used to know whether I was going to be able to say it or not. If I can wake up 2 o'clock in the night and say it all the way through, I say I've got it. And you had to just bring his work. He was a very nice person. Nathan dealt with him more than I did, but I dealt with him at school and in church.
So Reverend Forsyth was greatly concerned about education.
Very much concerned about education, the community, and the children.
Not only was he a spiritual leader, but he was a community leader.
Community leader.
Whole community.
And it came, as the years went by, the whole community was nothing but Reverend Forsyth. Reverend Forsyth. Oh, I'm going to Reverend Forsyth's school. You ask a person, where are you going? Oh, I'm up there with Reverend Forsyth. I'm in Reverend Forsyth's school. And that meant so much for the community, and it meant so much for the children. There's a lot of children that was under Reverend Forsyth is out in the world and doing wonderful.
Yes, ma'am. Nathan, outside the school, Reverend Forsyth did things in the community. What are some of the things that you recall him having such great impact on?
Well, I have to talk from a position of retrospect because, like my sister just said, he came here in 1924. That basically I was about 6 years old. But one of the first things that he started teaching us, the children, and by the way, is from that schoolhouse right over there now, and it could be open. The schoolhouse could be open, and we used to shut it off. Then they would shut off, cut it in two, but usually when time for when in the middle of the day, whenever you have that type of program, then we would open it up and the whole school would be together. And right here where we are standing now, I can remember the day that Reverend Forsyth introduced to us a ball. We didn't even know nothing about baseball. And the ball that he gave us wasn't a baseball, it was the type of ball that the people use for tennis. And we start playing baseball from right on this, right where we're sitting now toward the south side. And he didn't actually go into baseball. He started giving us calisthenic somewhat, so exercise. I mean, the children sitting in the school all day long. You get it when it's time for recess. You get out and do type of things like that. So.
Well, it's my understanding, Nathan, that Reverend Forsyth had tremendous impact on when we talk about his impact on the community, and things like helping people learn basic needs. I mean, it's simple things like putting in wells and those kind of. I mean, none of that was here till he arrived. Is that correct?
Very much so. He had those were the type of thing that he started to instill in the students, and then the students would carry it home or carry it abroad. In other words, I can remember distinctly that we didn't have water. The only thing, the only way for cleanliness with water, you get it from a well or a pump. And he instilled in the students that they have to keep their bodies clean. I remember, well, everybody used to have a wash tub that you wash clothes and stuff in, and he would instruct us how to do. We didn't have the physical thing to really heat the water, but in the summertime we would put the water out, right out in the yard, and the sun would heat it. The sun would heat it, and then about 4 or 5 o'clock you could go and take a bath. And things like other hygienic things, even like your teeth and etc. He really started us off to take care of your teeth, because people didn't care. He didn't care nothing about teeth. You just get up morning after morning and go on out. But those things we were instructed in, and it might sound funny, but going back to this bath situation, you didn't have, and you couldn't get it, soap to take bath in, but he would. We had a type of soap he'd call Octagon soap. Really, that was a scrub soap, a soap for clothing and etc. But he tells us how to use that soap and to get your body clean and etc. That really put something into the kid, because I can remember after getting in the age of about 13 and 16 and etc. I could look at other people and know that you could look at them and tell that they weren't taking care of themselves, and sort of give you an awareness that these people are not actually clean. So these were some of the things that he taught us in. Now that was on the periphery, on the outside. Now, the real thing, when you go into the school, you were taught. You were taught all the schooling according to the books that we had at that time, and the books were many. We would have at least about 6 or 7 different class, whereas when he came here, we didn't have but one book. And getting the book, we didn't get them from Georgetown. He would order them and come to the mail. We didn't know anything about geography and mathematics and stuff like that. It wasn't given. It wasn't even given in the public school. Of course, I never went a day to public school.
It was always this school here.
Always this
Holy
school.
Cross Faith Memorial. Well, now Miss Ruby Forsyth was Reverend Forsyth's wife, and she actually came at a later time, didn't she, Johanna? After Reverend Forsyth had been here a while.
Oh, he was here a while before. When Reverend Forsyth first came here, he wasn't even married.
Okay.
He got married in Charleston after a while, and then Miss Ruby finished out her term in Charleston, and then she came over here with him, and she started teaching then.
In the school that actually still sits on this campus.
On the campus that
same school.
she taught in, and Reverend Forsyth taught in.
Right.
And she came out. She came over here with a candle, to a bright candle. Helped the children in the church and the members in the church, and extend herself to the community.
Mm-hmm.
She was a very permanent person in the community, and everybody loved her. And she joined in with Reverend Forsyth to improve the educational system. Both of them believed in education and Christian living.
Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Well, Ruby Forsyth actually taught in this school mainly her entire life, I suppose.
Yes, in the school right over there. Mm-hmm.
And Ruby died just in 1990.
1996, I think, something like that.
1996.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So she stayed right here.
Right here, all of her life.
Well, as we move through time just a little, I'd like for us to think about what it was like growing up, living through the 50s and 60s, which were crucial times in the civil rights movement. What it was like being here on the Waccamaw Neck, and what the things that were taking place in the larger community, in the larger world, how it impacted this community.
Well, it impacted this community. This was even after. Personally, I had my tenure in the service in the United States Army. In order during that time, we signed up right here, right in the schoolhouse there. The people who were going into the army. That's where we did our signature. But in the latter part of the 50s and early part of the 60s, that was when Martin Luther King drive was going on all over the United States. It impacted the whole place until what was going on was like a whisper. It wasn't really just everybody out there blah 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 what was going on, and actually everybody, when you're grown, you got to do something to live. We had already formed up an organization in Georgetown, and for some reason, I think it was in '63, it was noise that Martin Luther was coming through this way, and the principal people of Georgetown, they didn't know how to handle it, and they got in contact with my partners, Sam Bond, Sam Hudson, and myself, and tried to form a task force so that it could meet. He was coming from north, south, going south, so that's the way they got. Really, it was something that wasn't so, but it was something that hit the governing people and etc. And so they asked us to form a task so that nothing would happen if that did nothing bad would happen, like you have some kind of confrontation or something like that, and because that was a time of confrontation, you'd be confronted with anything that you want to do, and that was a job that really was given us, and that it was asked of us, and we had to do all we could to keep keep the situation under control, and the man never did come through here. Didn't come through this section, but that was the feeling. So that's the kind of general feeling all over the country, the southern part of the country. If King was coming or going to be nearby, everybody was pretty much upset. Pretty much upset. They didn't really know how to handle the situation. I mean, really upset, because I know I could tell by the pressure that they put on us to keep condition under control.
What do you think upset people, or people were upset most about, Nathan?
They were upset because some of the radical would try to do something to King or his group, and they couldn't afford to have that. They really couldn't afford to have that, the same as they didn't want to have it in Alabama when he got killed. In other words, he carried so much power until that power was really respected. To me, I could visualize it like this. The power that we all know, the power that Jesus Christ had. If he just look at a man, his power is so much so until the man don't know what to do.
Yes, sir.
Well, that's the way I would put his power, would lake onto that. Or he didn't have that kind of power, but everybody sort of take a chill if they think that he is going to be near wrong or something like that.
So indirectly, he had lots of influence on the people in this community.
On the whole, well, I would say the whole United States, but the southern part, believe me, if his name is mentioned, is a shaking. I mean, some people might try to deny it, but you could feel it, especially if you have any intelligence, you could see it.
Johanna, during that same period we're talking about, I'd like to hear your comments on your relationship with the white people that lived here.
White people
during that part of the civil rights movement.
It wasn't no problem with the white people and the black that lived here. We always lived together. And when segregation came and people say, well, how you feel? I say, I feel fine, because we always had white people in our church. Sundays, sometime they pushed the door open and Uncle Allen would be teaching Sunday school, and he'd get up and invite them in to the front seat. The only thing we had thought, why are you giving them our seat? That's where I was sitting. It wasn't no problem with us, and I believe that we got along pretty good on Waccamaw Neck with the white and the black, because the white and the black always worked together. Last week, I was invited over to Lucille and Boo Lashkett house, and I went over there, and I thought about the good time we used to have together. The Browns would go over to the Lashkett, and the Lashkett would come over to the Brown. And it didn't make any difference. I met one of the younger lady the other day. She said, Johanna, do you remember when we used to play a lot? I said, yes, girl, we really used to play a lot over to my house. Then the next time, my mother or my father will take me over to Mr. Lashiker's house, and we would play. And I don't think it was very, very hard for integration here, because with us, we kind of used to it, but it was hard with some of the other people.
How did the conditions change much when the Waccamaw Neck was really connected to Georgetown? Did that it had to bring more people here and create more more travel through here because simply because travel was made easier, and the influx of people.
May I say something?
Yes, sir.
I think you ought to be on record on what Johanna just said. True, that we had a situation between the black and the white, especially through this church. As she said, we used to that. We white ministers and so forth, white visitation, and etc. But there is something that should go on record. We, just like anybody else, knew our place. That's what should go on record. We, just like he said, they come visiting us and etc. And they're fully welcome in the church and at home, all through the house and etc. But when we go to them, our place is the kitchen. So, however that is supposed to be explained, it ought to be on record.
Nathan, I'd like to hear you say a little more about that, about knowing your place. Was it a subservient position that you felt like when you a lesser position?
Oh yes, definitely so. We had post offices and etc. in 3-4 locations. And everybody goes to the post office, but we would have to wait. You didn't just go up there like a citizen should. You look at the situation, you bide your time, and you last. Things like that. Is that clear enough?
Yes, sir. How did it, I don't want this to sound like a cliche, but how did, do you recall how it made you feel?
How it made you feel?
Yes, sir.
Well, yes, I can. I still got to feel it. I don't act that way. But it's something that they put into people that was, I mean, that's something that if you grew up with it, you can't get rid of it. That might catch you like that isn't so. Sometimes you go into a situation or a gathering or so forth, and you got to fool around until you get, I don't know the word to use for that, but until you get sort of get situated, and then you can act like other people. Now that's the truth.
Has that you feel like that's so even today?
Even though I know it isn't so.
Yes, sir.
No. You feel like you sure do. It's just something that, you see, because the way it went into you, it was forced or scared into you. You had to accept what was given, even though you know you shouldn't accept it, and it just is something that you can't rub out. Now, I know that the people now, like someone born in the 60, 70 or something like that, they don't feel like I feel. I mean, even black. You can't get over it.
So a generation or two under you, you feel like we're actually making some strides in that respect. But do you feel the same way? Or
Yeah,
do you
I feel
like
the
that?
same way. The children, like my grandchildren and great-grandchildren, everybody's the same to them. And they came up in the time when they didn't have to fight it like we fought it. And it's no different with them. And that's just like Nathan said. We grew up in that time, and we sometimes, you still know your place. You still know your place, and you don't push it. Now, that's the way we feel about it because we came up in that time.
It's hard to explain.
It is
that's
hard
a hard
to
thing to explain. You strain and strain and strain, and you can't explain it, but it's there. Be frank about it.
Yes, sir. Well, I'm glad you said that, and I do think it's important that
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
that we talk about that. Gosh, well, we need to stop for a second. We really do. Begin to tell us something about being able to vote, for instance, on the Welcome on That.
All right, well, as a whole, we couldn't vote. And then it came the time that we could. And that was very frightening because you didn't know what would happen. I mean, there would be some element of people could start something anytime, and we had to almost go into the voting booth. If you wasn't prepared on person, you were prepared right quick. If something happened, like somebody want to hurt you or do something like that, and we were ready to put up a fight.
Mm-hmm.
And in our instance, in our on here on Father's Island, we have a man, and he's still here. He had done over 25 years in the Navy, and he at the time the first year that we could vote. I guess I passed that voting booth 5 times before going in. Me personally, you have courage, but then you know how the situation is where you live. And one of those times that I was passing that booth, this guy, he was stationed in Norfolk, Virginia, and he came down, it's near Willie Murray. That's the one thing I give him credit for. That's what gave me the credit, gave me the courage to really go on in there and vote. People just going in, coming out, going in, coming out. I saw them. And one of those times, he came down. I don't know whether he stopped home or not because he lived here. And he was fully dressed as a Navy man and went on in there and voted. And that alone boosted my courage. I was going to vote, but I didn't know just what one of those times that I would go in there because things were bad, at least as you think. So then I went back and drove right up in the yard and got out and went in the boat. The carriage was right down the road.
Nathan, was that just men, or was it men and women voting?
Everybody could vote.
Everybody.
The law said then that we could vote. I don't know whether it was a state law or federal, but that was the first year that we ever voted in our life.
Mm-hmm.
I drove up in the yard and got out. I was doing construction work. I got out my truck and.
How old were you, Nathan?
I was about 50. Somewhere along there. We have, man, I mean, is something you might have to fight about. But it was just something that had to be done. And as I headed toward the entrance to go in to cast my ballot, I had never cast a ballot before in my life, and then you were scared, you didn't know how to vote or whatnot. And a lady was coming out there. It was a white lady. I'll call her name in a minute. Because I used to do work for all the people and so forth around here and on the beaches. And a lot of people knew me. And that lady came out there. She was Julie Drake. She died about 2 weeks ago in Florida. She came out there and she saw me, and from here to that door, she just threw her hand up. She was one type of person that was glad that we could use our franchise. And she said, "Oh, Nathan," and she coming on and threw her hand around me, and I don't know whether a hole in that ground here or not. I was so scared. I was scared because those kind of things just wasn't happening. So those were the kind of conditions that we had to go through, and we had to go through them so that we could carry on when the next time comes. We were the first to do it, and it was tough, real tough. I had another tough thing that happened to me about voting, and this was before that one. I was overseas in Belgium, and they had a soldier's vote wherever you be. And the guys, someone came by in outfit and giving out ballots, paper ballots, so you could vote. I was in Belgium. And another guy and I was friends, and he was from Kentucky. And he got a ballot and voted. And then immediately he came and said, "Brown, you finished voting?" I look at it. I was from South Carolina. I didn't get no ballot. I just kept that in me all the years, but that's a hurtful thing. You fighting the war on the front line. Voting is being done and you can't vote.
And you can't participate.
So I just wanted to add that onto the Martin Luther King while it's there.
Mm-hmm. Johanna, your recollection of those times are pretty similar to Nathan's. Are there any time that stands out?
Yes,
for you?
it's similar. I don't think I had to go through as much as he went through, because at that time I was teaching, and Bill Murray and some of the folks from Georgetown Democratic Party, they will come around and have meetings and talk about it and just tell us you have to vote. You just got to vote. I want everybody to go out to the poll tomorrow and vote. And I made up in mind if it was something I had to do, I would do it. Mm-hmm. I went on and I voted. I didn't have any trouble. They just kept asking me, "Where you're from, and where did you go to school? Can you read? Can you write?" I said, "Yes, I can." And I just went on and they gave it to me, and I got my little voting card, got it now renewed about 3 times, but I still have it, and when the poll opened, I'm right there.
How old were you when that was taking place?
How old when I was voting?
Yes.
Oh, I think I was about 30.
About 30.
About 30 years old.
During those times. Well, now you all, you raised your children here, your families, and the things that you've been sharing with us here were certainly milestones for the whole community and the county and the state and the nation. And what you all were doing and participating in certainly had effect on later generations. And that's what I'd like for us to talk about for just a minute. If you'd tell us about raising your families, educating your families here, and you know, if you have children that live here or live around close, or tell us something about that, Johanna.
Okay, I had 2 boys. First one was Glenn, and the next one was George Wendell. And at that particular time when they were supposed to go in 1st grade, didn't have kindergarten then, I taught at Parkersville School. But this was my school here. And everybody said, why you sent your child to Parkersville School? I said, if the county can pay me to teach, my children can go to that school. And Glenn and Wendell went to the school, and they made good in life. And there's a lot of people that was going to Parkersville School, took their children from Parkersville School and sent them up here to Reverend Forsyth School. They just got to go to Reverend Forsyth School, but because he was so firm with them, you had to do this, and you had to do it. You must do this, and you do. If you don't do it today, you're going to do it tomorrow. So you just as well try hard to get it off today. And during that time, it was hard for sending my children to college. My husband was living, but he died shortly after that. And Glenn went to Voorhees for 2 years, and after having left there, he went to St. Augustine in Raleigh, North Carolina. And when he finished, I think he spent about 3 or 4 days home, and he was called to the Army. And he was married then, and his wife came and stayed with us until he came out. When he came out, he moved to Baltimore, Maryland. And that's when I realized that his children will not be here in this church, because he's living a place, he's working a place, and he will have to have his children to go there too. And that was kind of hurtful thing, because all of our young people, as soon as they finish high school, they leave and go someplace else and build a family out there, and we just miss that. But I'm so happy that all the children who came to Reverend Forsyth School in this church, I'm so proud of those children that they made it good. We didn't have anybody to kick back on us or anything. And one time it was so hard for me with my children to go, when Glenn was in college, I said, Lord, I don't know how I'm going to make it, but just help me to make it. I left home 2 years and went to Florida. And I worked with the migrant people out there, daycare for the migrant people. They brought the children about 6:30 in the morning, and we kept those children until about 6:30 in the evening. And I stayed there until Glenn finished college. When I sent that last tuition for Glenn at college, then I said, well, now I think I could go home now. And I came here and I rested a while, and then I started working again. But it was very, very hard to send your children, because you had to pick place where you to send these children. You couldn't send them any place you wanted to go. And we wanted the children to feel at home and feel that there's somebody, and that somebody cares for them. And if you get that instilled in children, you just about got them. And that's, both of my boys were just like that.
But it was important to your generation that the children be educated.
Very
go
important.
to college.
Very important.
South Carolina State, Voorhees,
St. Augustine.
St. Augustine.
And back to other school.
Well, now, have you seen in this area the fact that generations under you all have left and not come back? How's that changed the community, Nathan?
Well, I can give you one quick example that is happening right now, and then you can your mind I can go on to others, or I can tell you others. But we have a family here. Well, I'll name them the Jenkins family. The Jenkins family had about 5 boys, and all of them is away from our father's house. And they have property here. They have about 20 acres of property right back in here. But just over the past couple of years, Corinne helped me, did it for me, helped me, wrote a book for me, a book on my life. And the Jenkins family and us and others too who grew up together here on the island. We've been keeping up with each other over the years, and I sent him a copy. One of the older boys that is along with me, I sent him a copy of my book, and I heard from him day before yesterday. And it was just a reminder of things that happened on Paul's Island. And he liked it, so he called me right back. He told me he had already read it from back to back. And right at this particular time, it probably in the mail, probably hadn't gotten here yet, because he go over there to the office. He said he's ordering 6 copies for his family, so he can send it out to them. But that's what happened to the black families. They had to leave Paul's Island to make a living decent enough to satisfy. And usually they're not coming back to stay. Now and then you find one that'll come back because Johanna's son is coming back now. He's building a house here. But it isn't like that with most of them. When you get your roots tied down someplace else, it's hard to dig the roots up and just say, I'm coming back home. But more than that, it just fall in with the trend of time. And the lawyers and the people with money and et cetera and so forth, they see this thing, and they got in behind it, and the lands that these people own, thought they own, those lands are gone. And the reason that they're gone is because the black people as a whole, say the generation before me, down to that generation, they would gain property, and in their mind they'd leave it for their children, but that's heir property. And these people that are here, since the course is, everyone is coming down to the course and etc., the lawyers and etc. get into these property, and I know how it's done, but I'm not going to go through all of that. But actually, they get the property away from the heirs because those property wasn't left in individual name or individual name. And if one heir sells his portion, I don't care who he sells it to, the person that buy it, he or she become a heir.
Right.
And the way properties are going up in monetary value and etc., they put it up on the courthouse step to be sold, and mostly the ones that have left to make a living can't come back. Very few of them can come back. It's much more than that, but I think that's enough for someone to understand how the thing is done.
Well, Nathan, you're saying that it's possible that for 2 or 3 reasons that taxes, because of the property being appraised so much higher than it used to be, that taxes are forcing people to sell their property?
No.
Or
I'm not saying that.
Okay.
Let me make it more explicit. The people who obtained the properties that were heir property, that is the reason they wanted to obtain it, because they could make millions from the property. But here's how they obtain it. They buy out an heir, and they do it around here for $300. And then they give an offer to the other heirs to buy the property. And the other heirs in California or wherever, so, no, I'm not going to sell, because my daddy and mother left that property for me. That don't mean anything. The person that buys this 1 year, and the 1 year is usually a wino, somebody who drink liquor and all like that, they use their own risk to do it, to pacify those people, to sell their share, and then they say, then after they keep it 3 or 4 years, they say, oh, well, I want to use my share. Now they bought a share now. I want to use my share, and nobody wouldn't do right. So we carried to court, and the court put it up on the auction block for so much money, just enough where the heirs can't buy it, but the others who want it can get it.
so, as a result of that, lots of black families on this Waccamaw Neck have been taken advantage of.
Taken advantage of completely.
Because of those situations.
I know of a situation right down the road there. Blacks had owned property from the creek to the river. And now you can find the blacks in the middle on about 5 acres of land.
Yes, sir.
All the influential people want the ocean part, and they also want the river part, and they got it.
And that's not all bad if everybody's being compensated.
If it's being compensated, something else I want to say. That I'm glad you said that. If being compensated, it isn't bad at all. Even if you put some money, some of what you're getting into escrow and that but compensate the people. But now I want to say this, even though that's the bad part of what you see. You see, this is how I feel about the situation. Everybody, all of my people might not feel it like this way, like I do. But you know what comes around, what comes go around, gonna come around. That's the way the world is, and people are flocking down this way, especially the elderly, and the place is becoming is being built up. But you know, that doesn't matter. It matters because it was done illegally.
Yes, sir.
It wasn't so much illegally, it was legal with full knowledge of what's coming. But do you know, in the next 25 years, maybe take 50, but I think it'll be done in 25 years. These people who we would say is disfranchised and etc., they will be disfranchised because they come right back and buy any way they want to buy and live any way they want to live. That's just the way of the world. I mean, things change and you have to follow through with what's happening. That's how I feel about it.
Well, a lot of people have been taken advantage of in those situations, and I know it's all been for the sake of growth, and primarily probably for the sake of people making money. But we cannot ignore the fact that black families were taken advantage of in those situations in this area. I think it's. Have you seen? We can see it in this church. Have you seen the way that the population is growing, and the way the percentages of whites and blacks in this church has changed just in the last couple of years? Is really evidence of the growth of the community.
That's evidence of it, and also evidence that even though you hardly know unless you're in the real estate business, but right in this church, right here, Litchfield, the beach part, like Lily White, and we've had visitors in here, and when talk to them and etc., and find out that they had property on Litchfield Beach. Mm-hmm. It's something that people don't brag about. That's why I'm saying in next 25 years, even though maybe a whole lot of blacks were ripped off, it's coming right back. The same thing, is coming right back, and ain't no way to stop it. Or in fact, you can't stop it now if you have the money, because the real estate people, etc., they can't discriminate against. If they put a listing of property and somebody want to buy it, they can't discriminate against it.
No.
If they do, they'll be sued, and they know that too.
But as a result of all this too, we're actually seeing the black population on the Waccamaw Neck diminish.
Yes, very much so.
Very much so.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, there's so much so until they almost getting to half of what used to be.
Yes. Mm. If we look at our church here, I think we see a really good cross section of the makeup of this community, and that's one of the things that's so great about this little church is that there are a broad section of people that attend this church,
Yes.
and that get along, and we do very well.
Get along fine. And it's one thing that I'm happy about, that we had this cross section, because you can count the young black people in this church, and you know that there's going down when they finish, there's going. But for the white people to come over with the black people, it is just a wonderful feeling to know that this church is going to continue after I leave. Mm-hmm. This was my church all my life. I did not want it to see it go down, but I don't think we had enough strong black people in it to keep it going. And when you came and brought some people over, that was the joy of our lives, because if we go 15 years or 10 years from now, we know this church will continue growing, and I hope.
How's that affected you, Johanna, to see this little church fill up with white people?
Tommy, that didn't affect me not one bit, because I prayed for the congregation to increase in spirit and in numbers. And when I pray for something and pray for it hard enough, I get what I ask for. And I certainly am proud. And the congregation is so warm and so loving. You just hate to miss a service in this church, because you want to see if your friend was there and the other person was there, and we want to see Tommy up here, and we want to see Roddy over there. And when church is out, you just feel good.
How do you feel? How do you feel about the fact that we're full, and we're actually going to right around the corner, have to build another building to house the amount of people that are coming, just because this little church is overflowing now, and we're actually going to have to move out of here into another building, and. How do you feel about that?
I feel good about it, because if you build that church, that'll be a legacy to you.
Oh, bless your heart.
Yeah.
That's very sweet.
And I think if you need the church, build it. But I don't think you're going to do anything with this. You're going to let this stay here.
No, this church, we'll always have this church on the Walk-a-Mon Neck.
Yes.
But logistically, we're going to have to just move into bigger
Yeah,
space.
that's true. And that's progress. I am happy to
Can
that
I
I
give
live
a
to
shot
see
on that same
progress.
question you asked, Johanna? Everybody have their own way of feeling, and I know I don't do too well in explaining myself sometimes.
I think you do fine, Nathan.
But this church and how it turned around, the bishop finally heard us. I know how we were thinking is this. We have a big Episcopal church on Paul's Island. We had a little black Episcopal church on South Carolina, on Paul's Island. It didn't make no sense when the big Episcopal church get as many as they could really carry to build another one. And the bishops finally heard what we were saying. It's time to, the island could have two Episcopal churches, but it was time to turn this into the right thing. Now let me tell you what I see and know all about it. After desegregation come about, there was an Episcopal church in Baltimore, Maryland, I've been there to many a time, even now. Johanna's son belonged there, but I went visiting there through a first cousin, because the first cousin and I were more the same age, and we were ace people. After the desegregation, they turned a little black church that they were going to in Maryland. They combined it with the white, and over long years, since the 60s, you can go there now and you'll find maybe about 3 whites in there. All the white left, one by one. I don't know it is their church, so I don't know what causes it or whatnot, but I know here the way this church is working with pure love. And ain't one gonna leave or either race on the count of that is like anything. We are happy. That's my way of looking at it from things that I see in other places. We are tops.
Well, I appreciate those fine words, and but a lot of that has to. It was established. Foundational love. This church is not something that you create, but I feel like it's something that has that's existed here for a long time, and it's just sort of carrying on through the new people that walk in the back door. And for that, we can all be proud. We can all be proud of that.
Very much so. We get along so good.
One of the things that, and it's really sort of strange to bring this up at the end rather than at the beginning, but that we have not thought about and we haven't covered is that I know that you all come from large families. I'm not going to ask you how old you are, unless you just want to willfully give that. I know you were born
indirectly.
You can say you're about how old, Nathan, if you want to.
I was exactly 84.
You're exactly 84.
Yeah.
And your whole life you've lived right here on Paul's Island.
Live right here, belong to the same church.
You and Johanna.
Yeah.
And you had, how many sisters and brothers did you all have?
It was 7 of us.
7 of you.
2 girls and 5 boys.
Are most of your family still?
Nathan, Philip, Louise, and I, we're here.
Yeah.
3 of them left.
3 of them have left.
Mm-hmm.
The legacy, you talk about legacies, and I can say without a doubt that the legacy that the Brown family will leave on Pawleys Island and in Pawleys Island will not be surpassed by any other legacies. You all have that to be proud of.
Thanks very much.
And it's it's an honor and a privilege to know you and to have you as part of this congregation, and to be in a fine relationship with you, and to share the love with you guys that you share with everybody right here.
There's one more little thing. Nathan talked about the little church in Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
My son called yesterday and said, "Ma, guess what? What is it, Glenn? This is our priest's last Sunday.
Oh, my.
He's leaving."
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Do you all have a supply?" "Well, we have to find a supply priest, but I don't know about a real pastor for the church." And you know one thing, Ma? It's not going to bother me because I'm going to be in Faith Memorial after a while.
So he's coming here. That's good.
Yeah, he's coming here after a while.
Yeah,
And but I hate to hear about that little church because it was such a beautiful little church, just like a little church in Georgetown when it was closed.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
I cried so much till I thought I couldn't stop. But things move in the way that it should move, and we got some of their members.
Yes.
They're
Yes,
right
we
here.
did. They are
Active too, active.
right here with us. Well, thank you for this time that you all have agreed to spend with us. And we've covered a lot of ground. We've covered a lot of years. And it seems like we've blazed through some of those times. But this has been good conversation, and we won't stop here. We'll pick up and continue on one day. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
How do we do?